great school for the 200,000 people or so who've gotten into the takeoff job. Yeah, particularly with nuclear. All this communication is on the nuclear line. Yeah, rather appropriate for the government. A later model of the Duxford Battle of Britain. Gun targets for the two main production of this aeroplane. And here it is, the Douglas A26C Invader. At that point south of Paris that November. With the 9th Air Force, they flew bombing, strafing, prediction and tactical reconnaissance missions. They also scored 7 aerial victories. Such was this type of performance. Production of the Invader actually ended with just over 2,500 examples having been built in 1945, but its service career was far from over. It was redesignated as the B-26 B for bomber in 1948. It was deployed in numbers of coastal Germany among other locations, and then came Korea. Invaders, they were called B-26Ks, later known as... time ago, and many are not here anymore, and I am sad about that. But as pilots, we never forgot the hundreds of thousands who worked together to give us safe, state-of-the-art aircraft to confront the enemy. It was this, above all, that gave us victory during those few months. And above all, Brian Hemingway makes his way to enjoy the show today. Victories during the battle out of the 16 we amassed overall. And then we have our very distinguished fleet taxi is the aircraft operated by Hurricane 501 from Duxford. The name of the operator suggests, an aeroplane that flew with number 501 Squadron during the Battle of Britain. It was allocated to that unit on the 19th of September 1940. Its first operation was 40 at Henry was just 5 days later. On only its 7th mission, the aircraft was shot down over Kent by Messerschmitt CF-109. The pilot sailing out successfully. The aircraft subject to the exact thing reconstruction from those events. Then we have the historic aircraft. Tropic was shot down over Essex and killed. The Wildcat survived the war, stayed in sorted from different sites in France, including Eschweiler, and all the squadrons made advanced there for International Class. Within left France, came back to the UK and France fell. The aircraft went on to drive in the Battle of Britain as well, eventually both the Battle of France and the Battle of Britain. For its first combat just 2 days after the Battle of the 52 minutes ago on the 12th of July. Then those over the landing strip happened due to repair. It was also from September to the 22nd by the
That was a glorious day. The sun was shining from a cloudless sky, and there was hardly a breath of wind anywhere. Our squadron was going towards Southampton on patrol at 15,000 feet, when I saw 3 Junkers 88 bombers about 4 miles away, flying across our bows. I reported this to our squadron leader, and he replied, "Go after them with your section." So I led my section of aircraft round towards the bombers. We chased hard after them, but when we were about a mile behind, we saw the 88 fly straight into a squadron of Spitfires. I used to fly a Spitfire myself, and I guessed it was curtains for the 3 Junkers. I was right, and they were all shot down in quick time, no picking for us. I must confess I was very disappointed, for I'd never fired at a Hun in my life and was longing to have a crack at it. So we swung round again and started to climb up to 18,000 feet over Southampton to rejoin our squadron. I was still a long way from the squadron when suddenly, very close in rapid succession, I heard 4 big bangs. They were the loudest noises I had ever heard, and they had been made by 4 cannon shells from the Messerschmitt 110 hitting my machine. The first shell tore through the hood over my cockpit and sent splinters into my left eye. One splinter, I discovered later, nearly severed my eyelid. I couldn't see through that eye for blood. The second cannon shell struck my spare petrol tank and set it on fire. third shell cracked into the collar and tore off my right trousers. The fourth shell struck the back of my left shoe. It shattered the heel of the shoe and made quite a mess of my left leather until later. Anyway, the effect of these 4 shells was to make me dive away to the right to avoid further shells. Then I started cursing myself for my carelessness. What a fool I'd been, I thought. What a fool. I was just thinking of jumping out when suddenly a Messerschmitt 110 whizzed underneath me and got right in my gunsight. Fortunately, no damage had been done to my windscreen or sights, and when I was chasing the junkers, I had switched everything on, so everything was set for a fight. I pressed the gun button, so the Messerschmitt was in nice range. He was going like mad, twisting and turning as he tried to get away from my fire, so I pushed the throttle wide open. Both of us must have been doing about 400. We went down together and dived. First we turned left, well, I knew I was getting him nearly all the time I was firing. By this time it was pretty hot inside my machine from the burst petrol tank. I gave him a parting burst, and as he disappeared, started thinking about saving myself. I decided it was about time I left the aircraft and bailed out, so I immediately jumped up from my seat. But first of all, I hit my head against the framework of the hood, which was all that was left. I cursed myself for a fool, pulled the hood back, and I relieved and slid back beautifully, and jumped up again. Once again, I bounced back into my seat, but I'd forgotten to undo the straps holding me in. One of them snapped, so I had only 3 to undo, and I left the machine. I suppose I was about 12 to 15,000 feet when I bailed out. Immediately I started somersaulting down, and after a few turns like that, I found myself diving at full whip. The result was that I immediately straightened up and began to slope down. Then an aircraft, a Messerschmitt I afterwards heard, came tearing past me. I decided to pretend that I was dead, and hung limply by the parachute strap. The Messerschmitt came back once, and I kept my eyes closed. But I didn't get the bullets I was half expecting. I don't know if he fired at me. So I hung down a bit longer, and then decided to try my limbs, just to see if they would work. Thank goodness they did. I still had my oxygen mask over my face, but my hands were in too bad a state to take it off. I tried to, but I couldn't manage. I found, too, that I had lost one trouser leg, and the other was badly torn, and my tunic was just like a lot of torn rags, so I wasn't looking very smart. Then, after a bit more of this dangling down business, I began to ache all over, and my arms and legs began to hurt a lot. When I got lower, I saw I was in danger of coming down in the sea. I knew I didn't stand an earthly if I did, because I wouldn't have been able to swim the slopes with my hands like that. But I managed to float inland. Then I saw a high-tension cable below me, and thought it would finish me if I could catch it.
2-seater. And following on from him, we had Andy Monk, Trevor Duggan, Group Captain A.B. Woody Woodball, was himself a fighter controller. Information on potential intruders to British airspace will be passed on from the Chain Home radar stations to Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory, and then on to the group headquarters and the sector stations of German raids, and the positions of RAF fighters going after them. The main Luftwaffe single-seat fighter of the battle was the Messerschmitt BF-109, the endurance of which wasn't great. They could manage just a few minutes dogfighting over British soil. The longer-range Messerschmitt BF-110 twin-engine fighters, meanwhile, remember.
Fortunately, it was a very calm day. My parachute just floated down and stayed down without dragging me along for some time too. I had a piece of good news almost immediately. One of the people who came along and who wasn't combat said they had seen this at one month ago. So it had
that next year is expected to fly to Poland as part of the Polish Heritage Flight Initiative, hence the Polish squadron marking on both sides of the aeroplane depicting, as I mentioned, different pilots of the Polish Heritage Flight from present here on the ground, and will be very grateful for your support in that commemorative endeavour now scheduled for 2026. The aeroplane returned to flight in the past couple of weeks, following work to largely new runner undertaken by Retrotech at their facility in see their superiority and ease the way for an invasion before all of them set in. Ultimately failed in those aspects. He was not the better of of chance, and there were many factors in that, so many things to change that prevented it, one of which was development. Here come 3 Spitfires to take on the messengers. These 3 Spitfires is flown just one mission during that time, a number 19 squadron veteran of the Dunkirk evacuation. Another pilot on number 19 squadron during the Battle of Britain was Sergeant George Unwin, who scored 9 kills with the squadron during the battle, and later, to an IWM researcher, described a typical dogfight.
It's very, very hard to describe. Something they have full of aeroplanes. It all becomes very individual. With Spitfires, Hurricanes, but you sort of bloke out, and they're the Spitfire had it, and if you're lucky, you get a shot at him. But all the time you're looking in the mirror, because it makes sure to be on your tail. That was the secret of their problem, I thought. The twin twos. The second one was there to look after number 1.
Sergeant Tony Pickering, who Hurricanes briefly with number 32 squadron figured kill, and then with number 501 squadron at Gravesend. He was shot down on the first of September in return to the fight, and claimed that he was destroyed today. He recounted his experience of tackling a bomber formation supported by BS-109.
It was always going in from we saw in the distance you'd see a big black cloud, looked like a thunderstorm, but it actually was a formation of probably 200 German bombers come through. Above them you could see these 109s as they were fire guns. If there was any knockdown, of course the senior blokes would claim them, and down you go. That was it. You'd then be attacked by these 109s, but it's a matter of looking after yourself, because every man really for himself.
Oh, look, the dog like 4, 5, 6 machines wheeling and turning around. Now, how can the machine guns go? Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now there's something coming right down on the tail of another. They're being chased home, and how they're being chased home. There are 3 Spitfires chasing 3 Messerschmitts now. Oh boy, look at them going! Hey, that is really grand. And there's a Spitfire just behind the first 2. You'll get them. Oh yes. Oh boy, I've never seen any.
05 throughout the period of the battle, joined by other squadrons on Hurricanes and Spitfires, plus the Baltimore Defiance number 264 squadron. During that summer, Duxford became a very international station, with Canadians, Czechoslovaks and Poles stationed here. Our trio of Spitfire 1As, as I say, led by... They're the other 2 Mark 1As, the aircraft of Comanche fighters have landed, followed by the aircraft restoration company's Buchon, our enemy fighter for the day, the veteran of the Battle of Britain. one display item. And as we saw the Wildcat taxi back a little while ago, due to the crosswind being strong trick surface, they was true. Touching down on the grass, Mk.I with his Commonwealth CA-13 Boomerang. Radial engine model 75 P36 family was developed the line of P40s. This was not a particularly good high altitude fighter, but it was very good at low level. Soviet Union during World War II. Fought on both the Allied and Axis sides of the Second World War. During the Battle of France, and quite a lot of that, as the P40S comes into land, has tended to go a little bit. And very appropriately, it was a Frenchman, former French Air Force fighter pilot Captain Lancaster at the console of. Now in front of us, the Bristol Blenheim 1F. And here is the Mk.I. Potential was seen it as a new light bomber. when built on the 2nd and 3rd of July 1940, just before the Battle of Britain. Gallantly. With the short Mark I nose replacing the long Mark IV nose that it had before. This nose actually taken from a home-built post-war electric bubble car contributed to the project and has allowed this absolutely stunning sight, that of a Mark I Blenheim operated specifically delectable display in it from John Remain. But now getting airborne another great multi-engine Duxford Battle, the Boeing B-17G Sally B. B-17 like this, liberated of course, were a common enough sight to this particular area. And this final pass with smoke on to simulate damaged engines, a salute to the members of the Sally B supporters club who helped keep this aircraft flying. From this moment operator, Ellie Sallingbow, without which quite simply this airplane would not be in front of us now. And I think the two fighters we saw getting here well ago, the Hawk the ISS, display of the starboard inner engine howling the Untitled checkerboard marking the generator from there. Edgewise comes in. Over Europe, and part of the problem early on was that there were no escort fighters with sufficient range able to accompany them, but then the 347 the so-called little friend was escorted bombers to and from Germany, so there were great helps to pass on to the customer, even though of course the enemy Nationalist Germany. They took care of those tanks in the day. Yeah. Much loved aeroplane. Oh yeah, 3,752 air-to-air kills from B-17. In orbit, RAF Southeast Asia Command used the large numbers. The mob today. In comes the T-47, following on from the Fury, as I say, Fighter Aviation Engineering, the operator of both of these aircraft. We have Paul Bonham in the Fury and Dave Fullerton in the Thunderbolt. Conflict between Honduras and El Salvador that was so big because it followed. With the Salvadoran air arm. opposed the Japanese invasion of China and were recruited before America formally joined World War II. And the Mustang was originally wore these colours was actually in China at the close of World War II. And there is Dan Griffith, after an inimitable performance by him in movie Mk.I, ex-soccer war Mustang on the same slot there. There are several veterans of that conflict still flying Europe alone. The Flying Bull F4U Corsair, the Red Bullback fleet in Austria, is another one of them. Swordfish in our show. Spare parts, I believe, aboard the Scottish Aviation Bulldog earlier this morning. I'm sure many of you saw the report display as well as you in the show. Fantastic sight this is. And in one car. Flying Officer John Dixon. Now the Swordfish. Rather a good Blenheim, especially not in such a leading role. Aircraft that has a cruise. But in spite of that, the Big Arm Swordfish crews were very well trained in torpedoes. big wind here, about 5 big wind, a Spitfire target.